This is the monthly roundtable discussion of the Council for Strategic Affairs. For those who do not know about Council for Strategic Affairs, uh, Council for Strategic Affairs imparts education in the field of international relations. Council for Strategic Affairs fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. It encourages strategic studies in general to raise awareness, and Council for Strategic Affairs aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. My name is Dr. Adityanji, and I am basically the President of Council for Strategic Affairs. I will just enumerate the activities we usually do. We usually have once a month a roundtable discussion. This happens nowadays on second Monday of each month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have monthly guest lectures by domain experts. We organize symposia, meetings, and conferences. We also promote publication of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. So today, being the second Monday, we have a roundtable discussion. We have an esteemed guest, Dr. Jitendra Shah. He will be introducing the topic of origin of Wuhan, China virus and vaccine politics. I will briefly introduce Dr. Jitendra Shah. He was born and raised in India and obtained his medical degree MBBS from Calcutta Medical College. Then he came to US and completed his general surgery residency in Dayton, Ohio from Wright State University School of Medicine. And he did his urology residency at St. Louis University. Dr. Shah has over 40 years of experience as a board-certified urologist in private practice. He has had affiliations with various hospitals in the St. Louis area, and he has served as chief of urology at St. Anthony's Medical Center in St. Louis. Besides his distinguished career as a urologist, he has extensive history of political engagements and community involvement. He has been very involved with the Association of Indians in America, AIA, which was established in 1967. It is one of the oldest national organizations of Asian Indians in America. He has held numerous positions in Association of Indians in America, including chapter president, 2 terms national president, as well as chairman of the board of trustees. In 1985, he began serving as member of the National Advisory Council for South Asian Affairs, which dealt with US relations with the South Asian countries, and has served as the chairman of NACSAA as well. He was the founding director of the Indian American Republican Council. In 1987, he was appointed by the President Ronald Reagan to the Census Advisory Committee for Asian and Pacific Islanders population for 1990 census, and was the only person of Asian Indian origin on the committee, and was reappointed by the President George H.W. Bush to the same committee and served as chairperson of the committee until the termination of its charter in December of 1993. So Dr. Shah will be speaking on origin of Wuhan, China virus and vaccine politics. Before I hand it over to him, there are a couple of housekeeping announcements. While he's speaking, please do not interrupt him. If you have questions at the end of his presentation, we will deal with questions and answers. Please use Q&A function on your screen. You can type all the questions, and subsequently, I will read the questions one by one after his presentation. So with further ado, I invite Dr. Jitendra Shah to take the stage. Dr. Shah.
Um, Dr. Adityanji, thank you very much for the very generous introduction, but I hope I am able to keep that in mind and justify what you said. At the very outset, I would like to thank you and the Council for Strategic Affairs for inviting me to give this presentation. As you have mentioned, I'm a urologist. I'm not an infectious disease specialist, and I have not treated any COVID patients. My knowledge is derived from reading from the various sources. The information is in no way totally comprehensive, and I have tried to compress as much as I could in the time allocated to me. This is a new disease, and the knowledge is constantly evolving. And I have tried to be as current as possible. Nothing is etched in stone as far as this disease and the virus is concerned. The timeline. The disease is caused by RNA virus, and it belongs to the same family that as the one that causes the common cold, and that is the coronavirus. It was designated SARS, that is sudden acute respiratory syndrome 2, and then was termed COVID-19. The earliest reports are from 2012, when 8 Chinese miners were working on a copper mine in southwest China and came in contact with bat feces. They got sick with upper respiratory symptoms and were hospitalized, and 3 of them died immediately, and a fourth one died after about 5 months. Blood and nasal samples were taken from these people and were sent to the Wuhan Virology Institute. But no further issues arose, so things were quiet for a while. In late 2019, many doctors in Wuhan found positive results for SARS and spoke about this serious condition, which was new to them. 8 of these doctors were admonished by the local authorities because they said that you were spreading false rumors. And 2 of them uh, were admonished and punished, including the ophthalmologist. I have to read it properly. Uh, Li Wenliang, and most of us know him as he's the sort of a whistleblower who first brought the attention of this disease to the world. Unfortunately, Dr. Wen Liang later died. At the end of December 2019, the Wuhan Institute sent out notices to other Chinese institutions about warning them about this pneumonia of a new pneumonia of uncertain origin. And the very next day after they sent the notice, they had 27 new cases. And because of this, this triggered an investigation. On the 31st of December, 2019, the WHO was informed of this new pneumonia, and on the next year, in the 20th of January 2020, the WHO launched an investigation into this new condition. WHO reps went to China, but they were not allowed to go to the Wuhan Institute. And they were told by the Chinese authorities that this was animal to human transmission, and it was not a human to human transmission. The WHO took the word of the Chinese government and did not do anything further. January 24th, the Lancet strongly recommended PPE, as human-to-human transmission was strongly suspected. On January 30th, they had 7,818 cases in 19 countries of the world. And at that time, WHO called it a public health emergency of international concern. On the 31st of January, Lancet called for large-scale public health interventions as large-scale outbreaks were suspected to be occurring all over the world. And on the 11th of March, WHO called it a pandemic. Now, what had happened in the earlier cases when this was happening, when all the cases were happening in Wuhan, what the Chinese government did was they walled off Wuhan from the rest of China. So most of the cases were in Wuhan. They had a few isolated cases in Beijing and Shenzhen, but the vast majority was in Wuhan. And the Chinese government authorities did not allow there was a spring festival going on, and they allowed it to continue. After the completion of the festival, people were allowed to leave. Now, the strange thing is that people were allowed to leave to go to all parts of the world, but they were not allowed to go to any other part of China. So what happened? There were all these Chinese workers who had come to Wuhan for the Spring Festival, went back to, there were a lot of people were working in Italy. So they went back to Italy and other parts of Europe and infected a lot of people in Italy. So what happened? By the 19th of March, Italy had more cases of this Wuhan virus than Wuhan itself. And we had all seen TV graphics of all the things that were happening. Now, from Italy, it obviously went to other parts of Europe, and from there, a lot of the people were traveling to the USA and back and forth, and that caused a lot of viruses, patients to cause the virus to come to USA and infect a lot of people. And by the 26th of March, USA had the largest number of patients in the world. Now, when all these things were happening, people were watching all these things in Italy and all that. So the governments were all trying to close down the economies and lock down and all that. But you can only lock the country down, the different countries of the world, only for so much. So the other countries started to open up, and as soon as they started to open up, the economies gave it the opportunity for further spread of the Wuhan virus. Now, come to the origin of this. Initially, it was thought that the virus came from the wet animal market, which was close to Wuhan, and they thought that it was transmitted from the animals. But they did studies, and they did not find the coronavirus in the animals. So this theory was discounted, that it came from the animals. Now, there are two Nobel laureates, one from France. He won the Nobel Prize in 2008, and his name is Montaigne, and he was from France. And the other Nobel laureate from 2018 from Japan, Dr. Honjo. Both of these had studied the virus sequencing And both of them asserted that this was not from an animal model, and this was lab created. As a matter of fact, uh, mm, the Japanese Nobel laureate even said that he would bet his Nobel Prize on it. Dr. Redfield, who's the past chief of the Centers for Disease Control, also said that the origin was from a Wuhan lab. Uh, Now, there's a slight explanation here. There is a method used by several labs, and that method is called gain of function. Now, by this method, what happens is that a benign virus is passed through animal vectors several times to artificially accelerate the natural mutation rate of that same virus. And what in effect does is that it it creates a virus which was benign and now has become very virulent and very malignant. The aim of this was to create a dangerous condition so that you could create a vaccine that could be used for use in the future. That was the main intention of this kind of experiment called gain of function. Now, this work was done in several labs, but it was chiefly done by Dr. Ralph Barrett at the University of North Carolina. And it was felt by some that this was dangerous and it should not be done because we're dealing with a dangerous issue. So it was banned in the United States. Dr. Anthony Fauci believed in this method, and he, at the NIH, from the NIH, he gave a grant of $34 million to the Wuhan Institute to continue this gain of function experiments because it was banned in the USA. There is a nonprofit organization called EcoHealth Alliance, and the chief is a zoologist by the name of Peter Daszak. And he had been sending teams to China for several years to collect specimens from bats and check for the new coronavirus so that they could which one would spark the next pandemic so that they can create a vaccine from this. Eco Health was getting grants from, amongst other people, it was getting grants from the NIH, Department of Defense, USAID, US Homeland Security, the drug firm Johnson and Johnson, etc. A lot of you will remember that Trump had earlier said that this virus came from a lab in Wuhan. The scientific community outright dismissed it. And Peter Daszak himself got support from a few other eminent scientists, and they wrote in the Lancet in which they denigrated the assertion by Mr. Trump. It is interesting that Mr. Daszak was also a part of a fact-finding team that was sent to China by WHO to investigate this virus. So you know there was a conflict of interest. Now, that is the part as far as the origin is concerned. Now, as I mentioned, this is the prevailing theory right now. But Mr. Dashak and his other team have discounted that. Now, the politics of this, um, it was, you have to remember one thing, that things were happening so fast, and people were dying, and everybody was scrambling around to do what they could. There was a computer, there was a scientist in England um, who did a computer model, and he guesstimated, he said that his computer model said that there are going to be 6 million deaths in the USA. So, I mean, all kinds of things were happening at that time. Now, everybody was trying to do what they could. Uh, uh, there is a consensus in the scientific uh, mm, group, in the scientific community, that anything Trump said, they had to oppose, and they did not like. Now, Trump came up and he said that, I've heard that hydroxychloroquine works. And so as soon as Trump said that, I mean, everybody was saying, oh, no, 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 it cannot work. Uh, the Mr. Fauci started saying that, and other scientists, they said we don't have any double-blind studies and we cannot recommend that for use. But we were saying every day, we were seeing doctors on TV, they were saying that I have so many patients with COVID and I'm giving them hydroxychloroquine and they are doing well. But anyway, it was not supported by the scientific community, and it was denigrated. Now, the same thing with medication ivermectin. A lot of doctors were using the same thing, ivermectin, also with good results, but uh, Dr. Fauci and others did not believe in that, and they, at every opportunity they got, they discarded that. Now, the thing is that we do not know why there was so much resistance from the scientific community. Uh, whether now hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were drugs that have been used, I mean, millions of doses have been used without significant side effects. But they just didn't want to believe in that. And so they said, we are not going to allow to use it. The very interesting thing is that the sick patients were getting dexamethasone, and they were improving. And the people who were complaining about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin did not complain about using dexamethasone, but they were complaining about those ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Now you have to remember that these drugs have been around for a long time. They are very cheap. Generic form is available. Now, whether the pharmaceutical companies did not want you to use that, they wanted you to use the expensive drugs, I don't know. Uh, Also, on the side, you have to remember one thing, that when COVID was happening all over the world, it was happening in India also. And the mortality and the morbidity in India was very low compared to the rest of the world. I think India was number 3 from the bottom. I think only Singapore and Vietnam had lower mortality and morbidity. India was, I think it was number 3 from the bottom. and people don't know why it happened. Now there were various theories. One theory was that in India, because of malaria, people were taking hydroxychloroquine all the time. They were popping pills all the time. Whether they got some immunity because of that, people had a lot of people had TB and had a positive BCG. Whether they got because of that, or whether they got because of the ultraviolet light. No, but these are theories. And even now, with the second wave in India killing so many people, in the uh, overall picture, the mortality and morbidity in India, even counting the second phase, is still far less than other parts of the world. Other thing that Trump had said, um, that it is good, ultraviolet light is good, and naturally, it made uh, the people, he was the butt of jokes on the Tonight Show and all that. They said, oh, yeah, now, we are supposed to get ultraviolet light radiation, and that is going to get better. So anyway, we do not know what happened, but this was the effect that the scientific community just did not agree with that. But as I was saying, when the UK professor projected 6 million deaths, there was a lot of anxious people in the White House, and they imposed the travel ban at the end of January to say that people from China would not be allowed. And the Chinese people, uh, did not want to be singled out, and naturally, they know U.S. politics, so they pointed to Biden, who had said that this travel ban was xenophobic, and they pointed to Nancy Pelosi, who was going to the Chinatown in San Francisco and says that it called it a racist thing. So these were the sort of things that were going on. And so that was the net result, that there was a lot of denigration. Now, about the lab leakage, there is another uh, problem. In 2018, the State Department, the people in the US Embassy in China were sending memos to the State Department as early as 2018, in which they were saying that the conditions in the Wuhan lab are not very safe, not very conducive to this kind of work. And they really said that this can be close to bioterrorism, and why would you want to work with China on this when China has a known department of bioterrorism? But these were the memos that were sent by US uh, people in the US embassy in China to the State Department. As I have mentioned, the scientific community is viscerally opposed to anything Trump said. I already told you about hydrochloroquine, ivermectin. I was watching, while I was doing research for this, there was an Australian 60-minute show. And the moderator of the show, and she had 3 people on this side and 3 people on the other side, and these were mostly all Australian. They had one Chinese guy, but these were Australian people. And the moderator was saying, referring to President Trump as the denier in chief. So, I mean, it is not the scientific community here only, but it was also in Australia. And I already told you about the Lancet. And Lancet, I think, is supposed to be a medical journal, but I think in the last mm, mm, uh, 4 years, it has had, I think, 3 or 4 articles that were very overtly political, and all they wanted to do was, um, mm, insult Trump. And so the, the scientific community did not like anything that Trump did. Um, Now, Anthony Fauci is the the chief person that the media loves. When Trump was president, Fauci frequently went on TV and contradicted Trump, not when Trump was at the press conference, but later on when he would be on TV. So naturally, he was the darling of a lot of the people who did not like Trump. So whatever Anthony Fauci said was gospel. Now, there is another very prominent group called the Barrington Group. Now, the Barrington Group consists of eminent doctors from Stanford, Harvard, and Oxford. And they have come up with, and there's another person who is not in the Barrington Group, but he's also a very prominent Dr. Marty McCary at the Johns Hopkins. Now, they all have opinions which are contrary to what Dr. Fauci says. And what has happened is that because what they said was contrary to what uh, Fauci said, they were just not paid attention to. They were not listened to. As a matter of fact, there was a conference in Florida about a month ago, and this Barrington Group was there, and they said that the closing of schools was not good, and they said that putting masks on these young children had a lot of problems, including psychological problems. And how did uh, uh, the social media react? The social media, the YouTube totally blocked that conference. So, I mean, they were not going to have anything that did not toe when go toe to toe with Dr. Fauci. Now, we come to the blue state and the red state. The blue states were all.
Dr. You have 4 more minutes to present.
Okay, that's fine. I will, yeah, I'll be done. The blue states had mm, all, the blue states did not want to open the economy, and they wanted to close it. And this was, you have to remember that this was happening with the election in mind. The blue states wanted to close the economy and blaming Trump for that, and the red states wanted to open the economy and uh, say everything was fine. But uh, if you look at the findings of the blue state and the red state, you see that the mortality and the morbidity is about the same in both the states. If anything, it was better in the red states. And the red states were better in spite of the fact that the schools were open, the businesses were not closed. And that, so what has happened? That in the blue states, the schools were closed for a year almost. And what happened? The students lost a year, and mostly it was the poor students, because the rich people go to private schools and they were taught. Charter schools were doing the teaching, and the poor students lost almost a year. And the other thing was happening is that there was a lot of psychological trauma, and the poor students relied on the schools for their meals, and they were not getting that. So, you know, again, uh, mm, we have the nursing home fiasco, where the mortality in New York and New Jersey is so high because Mr. Cuomo sent the um, patients, COVID patients, to nursing home, and you had such a high rate of mortality. And in Florida, they didn't, so they didn't have the mortality. Okay, I think I'm going to, you know, there were other things. I think it. I may be able to bring them in if they're doing question answers. So I'm done. So.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shah, very much for this, very detailed presentation with chronological point of view. We will start taking questions. I would request the audience to use either the chat function or the Q&A function to place your questions. But before we start the Q&A, I have a couple of slides that I want to share with you guys. Let me see if you can see my slide set. So can you see my slide set?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So we started with origin of Wuhan, China virus. This is a very recent article. The title is The Origin of COVID. Did people or nature open Pandora's box at Wuhan? Written by Nicholas Wade, published on May 5th, 2021 in the Bulletin of American Scientists. It's a very detailed and overview presentation discussing various possibilities that Dr. Shah discussed. And I must tell you that I read this article today, and their conclusion seems to be that the possibility of this being a lab synthesized virus is very high. They also say that academic community refused to consider that option, and as early as February of 2020 and March of 2020, they had totally eliminated that it was the possibility of it being a lab created virus. Most of the scientific community and virologists basically harped upon it being a zoonotic infection, having jumped from an animal species to human species, without actually having any concrete evidence in that regard. Now, the second slide shows you the famous Wuhan Institute of Virology. And question is that whether this Wuhan Institute of Virology is the mother of this pandemic. And I think that's a very, very pertinent question. And I hope that all the audience will probably ask questions in this regard. And the third slide I'm going to show you, has anyone seen this picture before? This is a screen grab from a video that became very much sort of popular on the internet. And what this video, it was a like 20 or 30-second video showing a Chinese girl eating a bat. So it raises questions whether there is animal to human transmission because of the eating habits. So all the possibilities need to be considered when we talk about what is the origin of this virus. Unfortunately, the scientific community did not do its job, and the latest review article from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, uh, you know, there are studies after studies that have been published that a virologist researcher, Shen Zhong Li, from Wuhan Institute of Virology, in collaboration with her mentor from University of North Carolina, Ralph Barrick, was involved in creation in the lab of coronavirus synthetic variants and has published the results. So if you could create certain viruses, whether for gain of function studies or for whatever reason, funded by United States National Institute of Health, why the possibility of Wuhan virus, which is also called SARS-CoV-2 virus, being a lab-created virus, was discounted so early? So it's a very, very pertinent question, and the jury is still out. Uh, there are two or three, hypotheses. All these hypotheses have to be considered and eliminated. And it is sad that the WHO team was not given full access in a timely manner when they wanted to visit. When they visited, they were quarantined for first 2 weeks, while China took time to scrub up Wuhan Institute of Virology. And as stated by Dr. Shah, the head of Eco Health Alliance group of labs, Dr. Daksha, was part of the same WHO team that was going to investigate, although he is deeply involved in research in Wuhan Institute of Virology. And lastly, Chinese government vetoed the participation of certain virology experts in this WHO team. Chinese government also did not allow the WHO team to have access to the raw primary data. They were given only secondary data, and they were not allowed to interview the Wuhan labs staff directly. So we have this background, and with this background, I guess we can take questions from the participants. So I would request the participants to use the chat function or Q&A function to give your questions and answer. Dr. Shah will answer.
Let me just make a comment before you the questions. Um, thank you for that article by Mr. Wade. I have read that article, and there were two other articles within the last 3 days. One by James Freeman from Wall Street Journal, and another by Rosen from Washington Post. Basically, they all are saying the same thing, and for that reason, three congressmen, and they all happen to be Republican, have asked for answers. They have written to the State Department, and they have written to the appropriate authorities as to give us the answer. We need more information. That is where it stands now. Sorry, go ahead now with the question.
Okay, so the first question is from Abhay, and it says, what is the primary intention to spread the virus? I cannot, I'm having difficulty.
Uh, the I don't think anybody wanted to. I mean, who knows what happened? But we don't think anybody intentionally wanted to do it. This just happened. But we do know that they were doing this gain of function, and they were creating this monster virus. And the aim was that maybe they could create. The aim was that they wanted to create a vaccine out of which would treat future pandemics. But sometimes things go awry, and Uh, we don't know because China has been adamant they have not allowed anybody. And you have to remember one thing, that China is flexing the muscle. Now, people in Australia, the Australian government just said that we want this Wuhan to be uh, get the proper investigation. Right away, the Chinese government stopped all imports from Australia so that they can have trouble.
So, thanks, Dr. Shah, about answering that question. I will bring forth as moderator some information to light. There's a document, internal document of People's Liberation Army, published in 2015, which discussed the possibility of using coronavirus for biological warfare. And that 215 paper, 2015 Chinese language PLA paper has been translated, and it clearly discusses the possibility of using coronavirus for biological warfare purposes. So we can only speculate at this point in time, but there are a lot of telltale, indicators that suggest A, that the origin may have been synthesis in a lab, and B, the primary aim may be more beyond gain of function studies to prepare vaccine or to prevent the pandemic. Actually, the whole entire world's experiences that if the primary purpose was gain of function studies, that miserably failed. The world has not been able to deal with this pandemic. And if the gain of function studies were done earlier, uh, there was no attempt to make a vaccine. There were other, corona-like viruses or chimeric viruses that were synthesized in Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I'm looking at my chat function. There is a question, what will USA do now to punish? This is from somebody by name Vandana.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It seems that I cannot see the screen anymore, and uh, so can you repeat the question? I can hear you, but I cannot see anything.
Okay. The question is by somebody by name Vandana. What will USA do now to punish?
Well, that is above my pay grade. Given the fact that um, no, I don't want to go there because I have my own opinions, and there are strong opinions about President Biden. So I only hope that something is being done. That's all I'll say.
So we have around 9 more minutes for question and answer. If there is any more questions, let's have them. So the second part of the first question, that what was the primary intention to spread the virus, there's a second part to that that I'm able to read now. Do you think there's a depopulation theory behind it, Dr. Shah?
Well, it's very interesting that these are the kind of theories that have been going on. Uh, uh, there was a theory that Bill Gates was involved in something like this in South Africa, and so that got a lot of publicity. And now this, I don't know. I have once you start talking about these, then everybody says that you're a conspiracy nut, and they don't want to give you credence. But that is definitely something that a lot of people do believe in.
Okay. The next question is, what is the best strategy to deal with China in future?
Again, the thing is that um, uh, I was, I think Adityan was also at that meeting. We were attended a meeting with by another renowned person, and he used the words that this country has created a Frankenstein, and now you have to deal with it. The thing is that uh, we have allowed China to become strong, and for the last 30 years, nobody has done anything about China, and now we have created Frankenstein. Do you know, even today, the postal service, China gets a preferable uh, postal rate because China is considered a poor country by the by the USPS, considers China a poor country, and they give them preferential rate. I mean, this is the kind of things that are going on.
Okay, so there are some comments. I will talk about those comments later on, but does not look like that there is a question per se. The person who asked about depopulation theory has given a detailed comment about this possibly being a biological warfare or a quote unquote biological bomb. Since there are no other questions coming, I will use some time for editorial comments. I am, choosing to call it as Wuhan, China virus. And there are in the general media comments as to why we want to use that term and why not use COVID-19 or, COVID-2. I will give certain examples. There has been a older tradition to link viruses to the place where they were first detected. So we had Ebola virus, which was found near Ebola River in Africa. We had Zika virus, which was initially found in Zika forest in Uganda. We had Seoul virus, which is a Hanta virus spread by rats and was initially detected in Seoul. We had a Belgrade virus, which is again is a Hanta virus in mice detected in village in former Republic of Yugoslavia. We had Kisnur forest disease in India, which was the virus was found first in Kisnur forest in Karnataka, and we have Japanese encephalitis A and B. The first case was detected in Japan in 1871. The unfortunate thing is that WHO keeps on calling it COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 virus, but then WHO is also calling Indian variant and Brazilian variant and UK variant. So for mutants, we are using the place of origin for terminology, but we are afraid of using the word Wuhan, China virus, where the virus originated. So there's a little bit of, rich political correctness going on. Second thing is that I see some part of Chinese government's behavior. This was the second time they showed total lack of transparency. When initially SARS, that was not a pandemic, but SARS infection in 2002 and 2003 was detected, it was the same response. Chinese government refused to talk about for a long period of time. So there was a delayed disclosure this time about clinical cases. There's a speculation that although in November and December of 2019, the initial cases were openly discussed. There may have been cases earlier, that as early as September of 2019, which Chinese government refused to talk about. There was prosecution and persecution of doctors who were whistleblowers. There was refusal to allow WHO to visit the ground zero when pandemic started. In fact, the permission was given almost a year after that. And interestingly, Wuhan Institute of Virology had conducted a study in India, in state of Nagaland. This study was funded by US Department of Defense Threat Reduction Agency with Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Duke University and National University of Singapore, and Uniform Service University of Health Sciences in US. And in this particular study, the Chinese scientists went to Nagaland and they collected the bat serum and the serum from bat hunters without seeking approval from the Indian Council of Medical Research and Indian government. And it is only after the pandemic came that Indian government became aware about this. So there's a lot of things done which are not regular. I already said that there was denial of permission to certain scientists as part of the WHO team. There was quarantining of the WHO team. There was lack of access to primary sources and raw data to WHO team. They supplied only secondary data to WHO. This dual preventive action, banning all domestic flights from Wuhan in Hubei province in China to other parts of China, but allowing international flights to come and go to China led to international spread of this virus. And in the beginning, Chinese government strictly denied possibility of human-to-human transmission. They also denied the possibility of airborne transmission in the early phases. Chinese government said that it is by droplet transmission, not airborne transmission. And last but not the least, China's popular media and some of Chinese scientists are currently blaming United States military for creating this virus as part of biological warfare. And the latest report is that Russia is accusing US-funded labs near Russia-China border of doing biological warfare by, manipulating the coronavirus. So there is a lot of stuff going on that we are not aware of. Now I see there is a question. Hi there, it is clear from the report that America also invested in the virus. Could you please let us know what you know about this? So some of this I already talked about and Dr. Shah talked about. Dr. Shah, do you want to say anything else?
No, no. The thing is, I'm sorry, for some reason getting this echo. Uh, uh, no, uh, I don't. Uh, no, I don't have anything to add because of this echo, nobody can hear me. Oh, okay. Uh, I don't know. You're still hearing the echo. I don't know. Can anybody unmute me?
The echo is because you are dialed in twice.
Okay.
Just mute one connection, and you should be fine.
I I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, you are okay now. Please proceed.
Okay. I think that with the present administration, I don't think we can expect anything because they are too beholding to China. And you said about Tedros, the WHO, Tedros had his job because of China.
All right, if there are no other questions, we will formally close this particular roundtable discussion. My heartiest thanks to Dr. Jitendra Shah, who did a very exquisite and detailed presentation on chronological, events of this particular pandemic. He also talked about political issues, but most important thing at this point in time, looking at totality of the data, that the possibility of this pandemic being created in a lab for whatever purposes has not been ruled out, despite initial denials by certain scientists and virologists. Uh, it's a complex issue why they would deny. It is somehow the way the funding of grants goes that if you go against the establishment in science, you would not get any research funding subsequently. And as it was stated that Dr. Fauci also supported this research, and around $34 million of the US NIH money was involved in this kind of funding. And especially this Chinese virologist working in Wuhan Institute of Virology, uh, Zhao Li, being trained and mentored by University of North Carolina virologist Ralph Baric. So there are academic links, and I think there's a situation of each person scratching their friend's back. So it's a kind of, an in-house network of virologists who are supporting each other's research and each other's funding, leading to the situation that there's no open mind on testing an alternative hypothesis whether this virus was lab created. In fact, it's phenomenal the amount of vociferous denunciation about that possibility with zero evidence. So with this editorial comment, we will end this roundtable discussion. This entire discussion has been recorded and it would be available on Council for Strategic Affairs YouTube channel. So people, your friends who want to see have not been able to log in, please go to our YouTube channel. It will be loaded immediately as soon as we close this session. Thank you, everyone, and thank you very much indeed, Dr. Jitendra Shah.
Thank you.
Thank the audience.